The death of accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein sends shockwaves throughout the local community.
Fox 5 legal analyst Wendy Patrick joining us now to explain. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning.
The question for a lot of people, why is Epstein's death getting so much public scrutiny? Somebody accused of the heinous crimes that he was accused. What is going on here?
Well, it's getting a lot of public scrutiny for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons being the reason he was getting so much public scrutiny, given the allegations against him, given the plea deal a decade ago. But now the public scrutiny really is focusing on the circumstances of his death, i.e. how was somebody who was so recently on suicide watch able to then be taken off and not monitored for a variety of reasons we're learning now, but for such a length of time that he was able to take his own life. And it's just one of those things that investigation continues. We want answers because the victims were looking forward to the healing process continuing by being able to face this man in court. And at least that venue they're now going to be deprived of.
If you're not familiar with some of the details, he did try to kill himself a few weeks ago, right? And then you said that he was taken off, and I'm curious to know what these reasons were, because when I heard this story break, and I'm like, how did this happen?
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up, Shali, because this man, it's only been a little over a month since he literally went from jet to jail when he landed in New Jersey from Paris on July the 6th. Fast forward just a little over a month later, and we have a couple of weeks ago a suspicious circumstance where he was found with ligature marks. He was found semi-conscious. There were dueling narratives about what happened. Was it a suicide attempt? Was he jumped? And then, of course, after being placed on suicide watch, getting daily psychiatric treatment, he was taken off because presumably the psychologist and psychiatrist said he's okay now. But then why wasn't he monitored any more than he was? That's what they're looking at now. Was it just nobody was available, everybody was overworked, overtaxed? Or was it something else?
Everybody was on overtime in that jail.
That's right. And, you know, everybody's on overtime everywhere. So it's one of those things that should someone like this, having so recently been taken off a suicide watch, been given a higher priority in terms of how frequency they checked on him.
It's bringing in a lot of people trying to figure out suicide watch. What does that mean? If you're put on a suicide watch, for example, in a hospital, it's a totally different scenario than if you're put on suicide watch in a prison or a jailhouse, because it just doesn't work the same. And what I was reading is that it rarely goes past a week. And you think if you have that deep of a psychological thing where you're trying to kill yourself, a week isn't really going to make the thoughts go away. You could say things to make them think that they're going to go away, but how does that work after a week? You're on your own?
Well, that's a really good question, and that's actually what's being discussed right now, is did he know what to say to have them basically believe that he was no longer
a threat? He's been fooling people his whole life.
That's
and
right.
Tricking people and hiding, keeping secrets.
More manipulation. But then even farther than that, how did he get the materials to use to kill himself? I mean, that should be something else. As a suicide-proof cell, or was he somewhere where there were bed sheets and other things that could easily be used? That is why even the Attorney General Barr is looking for an investigation into the circumstances of his death. And then, of course, now the civil suits are going to really ramp up now that we don't have, at least against him, a criminal conviction.
The victims, who are part of this, they were really looking forward to their day. I gotta imagine going through what you read some of what these women went through and wanting their day in court. Now what happens?
Well, now what happens, Shali, is they're going to be deprived, at least criminally, of being able to face Mr. Epstein in court, which of course is cathartic. It's part of the healing process. But that doesn't mean that they are going to be precluded civilly. Obviously, they can file suits now no longer against him, but against his estate. They want to seize the assets, and there's a lot that can be done there. But one of the other things that I don't think we're talking enough about is, remember, one of the charges against Jeffrey Epstein federally was conspiracy. Remember the Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Man Who Knew Too Much? Well, many are calling Epstein the man who knew too many, who might be co-conspirators. So it may be possible that others who enabled, who facilitated, who conspired with him to do what he did, trafficking-wise, might also be criminal defendants. So even the prosecution could potentially continue against other Confederates.
So this isn't over. It's far from over.
No, it's not. It's certainly not over. And I say that because my heart goes out to those victims who, again, were so looking forward to facing him in court. You've already heard from a few. There may be other avenues available for them to seek justice.
When somebody this wealthy and this powerful does things like this, there are murder and conspiracy theories left and right because of big names involved, powerful men involved. They don't want to get... Is there any credence to lend to any of that, or is that something that we just have to wait for the because people are already putting those things out
I know, and people spent the weekend talking about conspiracy theories, and let's just say it seems to be a suicide. However, the autopsy has not been released, and it's being scrutinized and looked at, and you could argue that, you know, whatever comes out of that may fuel or dispel conspiracy theories, but we know, covering this as much as we do, that they will hang out there regardless of what the reports find. But it does seem like it was a suicide, so we're going to be proceeding on that basis.
How hard is it for the victims to get the money? Because I'm assuming a lot of people, when there's billions of dollars, they're scrambling to hide that money or put that money away out of reach for the victims. How hard is that going to be to get that money?
Well, they know where a lot of the property is. I mean, this is a man that literally had a private island. You know, we joke about that. So we know about some of the property, we know about the jets, we know a lot about some of the bank accounts. But the reason your question is such a good one is what we don't know. We don't know, for example, how he even obtained the wealth that he has, and then where it has been dispersed, who's in control of it. But I'll bet behind the scenes, there are people working much faster than you can imagine in answering those questions as these civil suits are now being initiated.
There's some secrecy into how his brother also got all the money that he has as well.
It's a tangled web.
Oh my goodness.
Plot thickens, that's for sure.
Well, Wendy Patrick, we thank you as always.
Thank you.